this. The competitor, the champion, they bring the lessons of the experience with them, but they leave all the baggage behind.
May I have your attention, please?
Give me a heater.
Now listening to Clear the Mechanism.
The Robby Row Show.
The Robby Row Show.
Hey, what up, guys? It's your boy Robby rolling on the Robby Row Show. I'm your host. If you're new to this podcast, thank you for joining. If you can do me a huge favor, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Also, leave me a review if you like it. If it didn't, I'm not going to sit here and beg for one, but I just know that that's a cool thing if you review my podcast. Anyways, episode 35.1. That's right. We have another two-part episode because there is so much juice in these episodes that I don't want you all to miss anything. So we'll go ahead and split these in two. This first one's going to go about 20 minutes, 25 minutes long. My guest today is Jake Thompson. Jake is the CEO of the brand Compete Every Day. Guys, this dude is off the charts. I mean, he brings an athletic mantra into the everyday life of just being a competitor, what that looks like in the real world. Great stuff for you guys today. This part of the podcast, we'll talk a little bit about his backstory, how he started up his company. We'll dive into a little bit of what it takes to be consistent, what consistency looks like, and then we'll go ahead and dive right into failure. As you guys know, I've been listening to my show for a little bit. I like to talk about failure and how we can learn from failure to better ourselves, not just on the field or court or ice rink or whatever sport you play, but also in everyday life as well. I want to take this time and thank Jake. I want to thank Compete Every Day, the company, for sponsoring this episode. We got a treat for you guys. For listeners of this podcast and for followers on Instagram, we're going to go ahead and give out a shirt from Compete Every Day. Jake sent me one. They're absolutely dope. I'm going to put it on my Instagram here shortly, but we're going to do a little contest for you guys that whoever listens to this episode and the episode on Friday, that'll be part 2. What we need from you guys, a couple of ground rules of the contest. If you want to win a free shirt, that's a really cool shirt. Go ahead and look at it on Instagram. You can see it on at Compete Every Day. That is his company's Instagram page. And if you want to follow Jake or see some of Jake's stuff, you can go to his personal page at Life is Worth Competing For. Anyways, back to the contest. So the rules are as followed. Follow me. Follow Jake, follow Compete Every Day. That's 3 follows right there on Instagram. And then you got to send a screenshot of the actual podcast, whatever platform you're listening on. Take a screenshot of that episode, send it to my DMs, and I'll write down all the contestants, and then we'll pick a winner that gets that free shirt. So again, I'll post that on my Instagram. I'm sure Jake will post it as well. But I want to thank him for not only coming on the show, but sponsoring the show as well, guys. His company is doing a great thing, and I absolutely love how they take that mantra of being an athlete, competing, grinding it out, just taking it all in stride and throwing it out into the real world and just adapting to it, man. It's so cool to see this company and what they're doing. Jake also has a podcast at Compete Podcast. You can follow them on Instagram, and I believe that is the name of the podcast as well. So if you want to search for that on Apple, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, not really sure actually what platforms he's got it on. But besides the point, Jake's awesome. This podcast is awesome. Can't wait for you guys to listen to it. If you're new to this show, I'm Robby Rowland. You can follow me on Instagram at Robby Row 12. That is Robby with a Y. I'm happy to have you guys. I am so fortunate to be able to have a voice in all of this. I absolutely love doing these. So if you guys can do me a huge favor, I know I don't want to bug you guys, but it goes a long way in giving my podcast a good review, hitting that subscribe button, growing my show so more and more people can be reached and more people would want to come on my show and drop knowledge, guys. This is such a cool opportunity to give back to you guys. So again, I'm Robby Rowland. My guest today, Jake Thompson at Compete Every Day. This is the Robby Row Show, episode 35.1. Let's get to it, guys. Thanks for joining. Okay, welcome everybody to the Robby Row Show, episode 35. I have a guest, Jake Thompson. Hey, welcome to the show, Jake. How are we doing today?
Man, great. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, I didn't know if I should do like a little slogan with your introduction, like Jake Compete Thompson, or like I didn't know. I didn't know. Even with the introduction, how I introduced you. Now, is it safe to say like the CEO of Compete Every Day, Jake Thompson?
Yeah, that's the best way. Most people just call me the Compete Everyday guy. So
I didn't want to sell you short, man.
It's okay, man. I'm used to it by now. But yeah, officially, I like to say my title's Chief Encouragement Officer here at Compete, and been that way since day one.
Dude, that's so cool. So I got first introduced to your product or your line a few years back because you target some baseball players that I knew, and they had some apparel that they were rocking, and it's just, dude, great stuff. I want to start the show by just saying that I thoroughly just believe in what you're doing, man. I love your stuff. As soon as I went to your website, and again, like just shoot me those links when this is over, and then I'll post those in the show notes for everyone to see. But just loving what you're doing, man. And if you can, let's start the show off by just giving a brief of outline of how it all started, your upbringing, kind of what got you to start that company and Compete Every Day.
Yeah, man, where to start? So I grew up, as we were talking briefly earlier, in the sticks and piney woods of East Texas. So I was growing up in a little town called Jacksonville. I came to the Metroplex for college, went to grad school. Ironically enough, was really trying to get into the agent space on the football side and be the next Jerry Maguire that a lot of us
Show me the money.
Big dreams of Cuba Gooding and Tom Cruise. And, about 2 weeks left of my grad school program, I'd been interning with an agent, working with an agency, and decided to walk away. Just was not what I wanted to do at the time, not what I felt like I wanted to do the rest of my life. And that ended up being the fall of 2008, which the economy just sucked. And for a lot of us getting a job, for a lot of people getting a job was tough. I had a weird work experience in that the agency world and recruiting and working with guys was not traditional. And so corporate America looked at it as a little funny. And then you couple with a grad degree, MBA. So I was in a weird position and couldn't get any jobs, job offers, couldn't really get a whole lot of anything. And so I started freelancing, graphic design, marketing strategy, really working with groups, some in sports. I worked with a couple of sports teams and minor league teams, to telecommunications, to kids products. And a couple of years into that, I read a book by a guy named Donald Miller that really flipped my perspective on what I was doing with my life, what kind of story I was building with my life. And I was challenged and really just kind of woken up to the idea that I needed to do something bigger, and I wanted to do something more than just fill a bank account. I love the idea of money. I love filling a bank account. So let me backtrack off that being a bad thing, because by no means do I feel like it's a bad thing. But in the pursuit of it and how you gain it and what you do with it is really what matters. And so for me at the time, I was building a sandcastle in that I was doing nothing but buying myself toys and enjoying life. And I was doing nothing to impact others, to change mindsets, or help someone else. And so in that vein, I really wanted to change things up. And I came up with this idea of competing every day. I was always that smaller guy in sports growing up, in football, baseball, track, smaller guy. So I knew from an early age, if I wanted to play, I had to outwork and outsmart everyone else. There was always going to be more talented opponents. And if I wasn't willing to compete and get out there and do the work, then I wasn't going to see the field. And football was my love, my passion. And so I just kind of threw myself all in and learned to compete. And so later in life, I'm starting to go back to that word, and I'm looking at this word competition and competing every day. But this time it's a very different approach. And instead of worrying about competing against who I'm trying to beat out for the position and me focusing on them and what they're doing and what they do well, I was really focused on myself. As an adult, how can I compete against my previous best? How can I focus on myself, my lane, and do my absolute best? Because if I do that, the cards fall where they may, like I'll have done everything I can to achieve victory. And more often than not, you'll find that success. If you're spending your life always staring at what everyone else is doing, you're too distracted by what they're doing to focus on getting yourself better. You're always trying to be like someone else, and you don't have the same talents, you don't have the same abilities, you don't have the same anything that someone else has. And so when I started talking to people about this idea of being a competitor in life and competing against your previous best and challenging yourself to be just a little bit better every day, I started to see it resonate, and people responded to the message in very different ways. What it looked like to this person may be her career and challenging herself to break through some glass ceilings and to do better than she previously had. Whereas this other guy, it was from a fitness realm and pushing himself to get back into shape of where he used to be when he was younger and shake off kind of that loose tire that a lot of people add on later in life. And so as I watched this, I was like, man, there's something here. And so I started tinkering with ideas to see how I could bring this message to life in a way that people could really grab hold of it. And nothing was just working. Nothing was clicking until my best friend recommended I look at a brand called Life is Good. It's a t-shirt company out of Boston. Ironically, their logo is a stick figure guy named Jake. And so I was like, man, why not? Let's try this. And so I threw some money into a couple boxes of t-shirts and tank tops. I started selling them behind the CrossFit gym I worked out at back in May of 2011.
Let's go.
And then from that point, it was, let's go. Let's figure out what the heck we're doing. And more importantly, it was how can I encourage folks with this message and how can I remind them that they can be a competitor in life?
So it's like the thing that I first thought of when I'm listening to all this is like when you said who it resonates with. This is just humanity, right? Because we kind of get content with a lot of things in our life, right? And we kind of just get, and I'm not like calling anyone out because I'm guilty of this too. Like I'm a human being, and we kind of just skate by, right? We just kind of go do our work, whether it be an office job that we hate or whatever, and like you said, fill bank accounts. But this whole compete every day thing, it's not just athletics. It's every day, everyone that's in the world.
Yeah, it really is. Our messaging has been tailored toward athletes and fitness. And a lot of that is because as an athlete, you're always an athlete. You may not have played a game since high school, but you still consider yourself an athlete. You get competition. You get the idea of being pushed out of your comfort zone, of going up against an opponent and proving that you have what it takes. For a lot of us, it's about competing against other people. But once we start to compete against ourselves and quit comparing ourselves to everyone else, then it's a whole different ballgame because then we're challenged daily and it's not something that wears us out. Comparison will wear us down, mentally exhaust us, physically exhaust us, but competing against ourselves isn't. And so we speak heavily to that audience, but the things that make for a great competitor, grit, accountability, focus, relentlessness, overcoming setbacks, the things that we know as athletes and we've overcome in sports, that's life. And a lot of people that haven't had those same experiences in sports or other realms don't have some of those same shared stories, but they start to see what it takes to be a competitor and that about being gritty and about this resilience. And they're like, oh, I've never thought of myself as a competitor before, but I can be one because I can do that. I mean, the only thing separating me from being a competitor is making the choice to get better and be that competitor. And so it's really, like you said, it's that kind of global audience for us, which has been good and bad as a business owner. You want to go after everybody, but that's not really the best approach to go after everybody.
Yeah.
But I'm adamant about anyone has the option and opportunity to be a competitor. It's just not everyone decides to make that decision in life.
100%, man. That's huge. And so something I want to dive into right now is I want to target kind of my audience. So my audience is like younger generation athletes, right? And I think that makes up the bulk of the audience. But something that I see a lot in today's day and age is the consistency part of it, right?
Yep.
Whereas we can be really, really good with our routines and our focus and our scheduling and our time management for X amount of days in a row. and then all of a sudden the weekend hits and we kind of fall into a different path, and then that leads us down, and then the next week we're just super inconsistent. So what do you tell, because I know this is a struggle not just in sports again, but in just real life in general, what do you kind of tell, and how do you motivate individuals that struggle with inconsistency?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, for a lot of athletes, you hit the nail on the head. For a lot of people, the weekends are really their weekends, like WEAK. That's where they fall apart. Like you might do well with meal prep if you're trying to lose weight. You're eating clean Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday, you hit happy hour, and then Saturday, it's like, well, I had a happy hour last night. Like, let me do wings and beer and sports all day. And then Sunday, it's like, well, I did bad on Saturday, so I might as well just do bad today. And then Monday, you're like, oh, crap, I got to get it back together until you get Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
And we justify.
So, yeah, you try to justify that setback. And so consistency, you're always going to have setbacks. You're always going to have those times where you trip up. And so there's a couple of key pieces that we talk about a lot that I feel are crucial to maintaining consistency and then rebounding to get back into that consistency as quickly as possible. So the first is maintaining that. That's a daily checkup, essentially a daily game plan. Darren Hardy in The Compound Effect talks about bookending your days and controlling how every day starts and how every day ends. And if you wake up in the morning and you carve out that time to set the day, set the intention for the day, but set your schedule, like 8 to 9, I'm doing this, 9:15 to 11:30, I'm working on this. Take a quick break for lunch. I'm going to hit the gym at 1. Like if you control every hour of the day, then you're very intentional about going into that. You're able to control the variables. Mm-hmm. So you're able to be more consistent because you're in control of the entire day. It's a lot of the times when we just wake up, grab a cup of coffee, and head out the door without setting the intention or controlling it, that the day gets away from us. And when the day starts to get away from us and we don't quite do what we need to do, we find ourselves either chasing fires that are urgent and not important, or we find ourselves just not getting the things done we need to. And so we miss that day. We lose that consistency. And the second part of that, really setting the morning, that's so crucial, is it helps set your focus for the day. One of the things that we use here, that I use on a daily basis, that I've given our team, it's called the Best Self Journal. It's one of the things that I love to talk about because it sets a 90-day schedule, but every journal has a folder for the day, or a full-page spread, excuse me. And so you set your time day, but on the right-hand side, it said, what are my goals? Like, what is your big goal for that 3-month sprint period? And then down below it, it's what are my 3 targets for the day? And it's very intentional because you have to see what that big goal is. All right, if I'm a player, my big goal is to get a college scholarship. Well, there's things that you can do every single day to put you in a position for that, both athletically as well as academically. And you've got to be prepared for both, because there's great players that can't get into good schools because of grades. And there's so players that go on to play college ball because they had great academics and they were given an opportunity, and they ended up blossoming even to greater players at the college level than they ever were in high school. And so you set those 3 targets for the day of saying, these are the 3 most important things I have to accomplish today. And so if your goal is weight loss, or your goal is getting stronger, I want to lift X amount of weight, you got to make sure every day you're lining up. I'm either exercising, I'm stretching, I'm resting. Like, it all has to line up toward that large goal. So the first part of your day is huge in determining consistency, because it's going to set your focus. It's going to line your feet up, your eyes up, your head up, focusing on the right lane. The second piece is when you experience that setback, because it is inevitable in every process, in every pursuit, no matter how big or how small the goal is. The rebound is the most important, because everyone will have the setback, but champions and competitors are able to rebound from that much quicker. The reason they do that is, one, they bring the lessons of that experience with them. They look at why they had the setback. Why did I fall apart here? Why was I not consistent? Was I not controlling my day? Did I lose my focus? Did I allow outside negative influences to creep in? Did I start to surround myself with the wrong people? Like, what did I do incorrectly? And so they identify that immediately. What can I learn from this situation? What can I learn from this setback? But the second thing is where I think it's the most crucial, because the second thing they do is what 95% of people do not do. And that is this: the competitor, the champion, They bring the lessons of the experience with them, but they leave all the baggage behind. See, for most people, they carry this baggage. They look at the setback of, man, I failed at this. Like, I can't lose this weight. I gave in. I went junk food all night tonight. This is just not for me. I'm going to quit. Or I'm going to wake up the next morning. I'm going to be thinking about what I did the night before, and I'm just going to let it continue. Or, I skipped this workout. Man, I skipped this workout, and you're just going to beat yourself up about it and beat yourself up about it. You skip going to do the extra work. You skip going to do the extra work. Instead of saying, I skipped going to do the extra work. Why did I do that? Well, I didn't control my time. I should have gotten there earlier. I should have put in the extra work. Cool. Next time, I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen because I'm going to be intentional and I'm going to control it. Like, you've already moved on. It's Nate Smith, who pitches in the Angels minor league system, a friend of mine. He talks about having his midnight rule. And a lot of guys have that, but no matter how great of a game he has or how bad of a game he has, at 11:59 p.m., like, it's over. There's nothing I can do to control that. And so the next day when I walk out on the field and I cross that white line and I take the mound, I'm going to remember the things I did right, I did wrong. How can I build on my strengths? How can I get rid of or not make the same mistakes? But he's not dwelling on it. He's not just dreading it every time this batter comes up to the plate of, oh my God, this guy just drilled me. The last 4 times he's been to bat, I can't throw this to him. I can't do this. He's thinking, okay, I left one hanging last time. I need to make sure I'm throwing down and away to make him chase some stuff.
Yeah. I think that's it's super pivotal, obviously, in an athlete's world, because it's funny. I just wrote a blog on failure, right? And like how failure is one of those things that, I mean, it's talked about, but there's not a lot of light shed upon it about how we can grow through it as an individual, as like a person, and as an athlete. And what I want to touch on here is what that actually looks like. How can we grab the little bits of details that are within the failures, take those and be a man about it, right? Like fully, I guess, be aware that you failed and it's okay, but take the details and like grow from that. Like how does that look like if we're trying to do that as athletes?
Yeah. So a lot of that lessons from it is writing them down. Like it's a couple of parts. So one, taking the lessons, you've got to look back at every experience and every failure as something that happens. I mean, we talk baseball. The best batters in the game fail 7 out of 10 times. I mean, yeah, the very best. The very best. You're hitting 300 and you're failing 7 out of 10 times. Like, you could say, well, they're failing more often than they're winning, but they're continuing to go up there. They're making notes. They're saying, okay, pitcher threw this to me last time. Here's what I should expect. Here's why I missed this one. Like, they're thinking about it. They're writing things down. They're studying game film. That's huge, but they're also understanding failure is part of that process. It's not something that we ever want. Like, nobody wants to fail, and so much of society is afraid of failing, but it's only by going through failure that we actually get better. I mean, when you go in the weight room and you're lifting a certain amount of weight, when you try to PR, you're going to fail a ton. If you're not failing trying to hit a PR, you're not lifting enough. Right. Like, you've got to hit that weight. Just like the first time you start playing ball, you're probably going to miss some throws. You're going to definitely miss the pitch in batting. Like, there's a lot of things that go into it, but until we get up there and start to say, okay, failure's part of the process. How can I get better from it? That's mentally the biggest deal. That's why I hate participation trophies. Like, I am so adamantly against them because it robs kids of that opportunity to face adversity and failure and learn the importance. Yeah. You got to learn grit. You've got to learn how to overcome that adversity in life when things don't go your way, because when you're older, things don't go your way. And so mentally, it's starting to understand and embrace it. You don't ever want it. You don't ask for failure, but you embrace, hey, this is part of the process. And if I'm learning from this, it's simply a teaching lesson. If you dwell on it and keep thinking about that I failed, or, I'm a failure because I failed at something, that's where it starts to catch a lot of people up. But failure is an event. It's not a person.
100%. I think there's a fine line in there, right? Because we talk about having the 12 o'clock rule, right? We talk about, so for me, it's if it's a bad game or if it's a good game or whatever, as soon as I hit the showers, I washed it off, right? Like now we prepare for the next outing. But I think that can get misinterpreted sometimes because of those finer details within that failure that sometimes we as athletes get super prideful and we just go, I'm just going to forget about it, right? I'm not even going to open up that door because I don't want to deal with it. But for me, I got drafted when I was 18, my 19-year-old season, like I sucked, right? And I was that kind of guy where I had never dealt with failure before, growing up. That's not to toot my own horn or anything. I just hadn't experienced it. And I was always so anti, like, I'm not going to explore it, right? I'm not going to explore that area because it just brings bad vibes. I'm just going to be the happy-go-lucky guy. But there is a lot of good detail within that failure, right? I mean, I think it was, what was it? Edison said, like, I didn't learn just one way to make the light bulb. I learned to 300,000 whatever ways not to make it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's how he looked at it. But you think about that on the other side of the coin. How often can winning trick us into believing that we're great?
Oof. I hate to leave you guys hanging like that, but that is the wrap of the first part of this episode. Be on the lookout for part 2 airing here in a couple days, guys. All right, guys, that's another episode of The Robby Row Show. Do me a favor, if you liked the episode, or even if you didn't like it, go ahead and leave me a review on whatever platform you're listening to. Not only does it help me out with popularity on my show, but it also helps me out as a host of this podcast. Sometimes I don't know if I'm getting better or if I'm getting worse, and I need y'all's opinions. So go ahead and leave a review and let me know what you thought. So again, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Until next time, Robby rolling, The Robby Row Show. Your boy's out. Later.